You look like you have two heads.
I know. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Disrupture Now with me, your host, Lisa Kipps-Brown, and my double head tonight. I'm at the beach with my cousin, so she's got to hang out in the background.
Well, I got to be on here.
And my co-host, Rachel Garrett Mercer, and our guest tonight, this is going to be so cool, y'all, Dean McMurray, who is known as the military medium. So before we get into it, I'm constantly telling people, disrupt your now. Stop thinking within parameters, just free flowing. And I'm like, oh my God, Dean, I've never met anybody who disrupted their now like you did. You go from the military to a medium and psychic. So tell us about your background, how that came about.
Well, thank you, Lisa. And thank you, ladies, for having me on. It's great. I just got to share is I haven't stopped laughing since I've been on. Actually, about 5 minutes prior to going live, you guys were having a great conversation about sweet tea. And I wasn't saying anything. I was being really nice, but that Midwest. But anyways, I want to share a little bit. Great question about disrupting your now, right? Going from which you would think is, and which I was, a very traditional way of thinking. I was, the very atypical guy that was really, my life was ruled by facts and figures, kind of what I couldn't find in regulations. Then I really didn't, what I couldn't shoot or eat or, read about, it really didn't exist in my world. And, going back about 10 years, Lisa, it was, I had just returned from a last deployment. Our son, I lovingly refer to him sometimes as our deployment baby, kind of in the same aspect. We're just talking about my family after my dad got out of the military was like, whoops. But one of the things is that here, we just have this newborn, and I'm in my last 3 years of military service. Here I'm going to finish out, I was going to get ready to finish out 24 years with the military. And I'm looking at, in my mind anyways, it was, hey, I'm going to retire. I'm going to go and I'll be in my early 40s. The kids are still very young. Dad's still got to work. And, and the thought was just to work for the VA. It was going to be a very natural progression. Help vets. I felt like I would fit there, and it would be a good fit for me. And it was interesting because for whatever reason, the universe had other plans for me. And it was, it just seemed like all of a sudden somebody threw a switch and all hell started breaking loose in the home. And what I mean by that is clocks and pictures quite literally started flying off the walls. It was like the poltergeist type activity, and I was like, holy bleep bleep bleep, what is going on? Because I couldn't put any logic to it, because as the guy, and I think anybody really, I would take the picture that just flew halfway across the room, I picked it up and go, and I would look at the right, and I'm like, maybe I didn't put the nail far enough in, or I didn't put the drywall anchor in, or try to put logic to it. But then it was like, really, should it be going that far? It just, you would think it would fall, right? And so there was a lot of things that were not making any sense. And I knew, my wife had confided in me when I was overseas, I should add, is that her and her girlfriends were seeing a local psychic in our area. And she was, and I was jokingly referring to this lady as the Voodoo Chick, because really you got to understand where I was in my mentality, because I didn't believe in that stuff.
Sure.
I wasn't looking for mediums. I didn't believe in psychics. I think the craziest conversation me and my wife ever had, if you could even put it in the realm of spirituality, was talking about aromatherapy. Like, what kind of scent should we diffuse? And I was like, I don't know. Put in that orange stuff. That smells nice. That orange. Where was that? Right. So, that was probably the craziest conversation. But the rest of it, because she knew that, I couldn't go there.
Yeah.
as far as in belief, but I never, it was something that I know if she would have brought up to me, that she was doing that, you know, I might have, I did poke fun at it, quite honestly, but it wouldn't be something like, what the hell are you doing that for? I wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
But the piece is, you know, so I was referring to this lady as the Voodoo Chick. And when all this stuff happened, I turned to my wife and go, you need to get that Voodoo Chick over here. Because I was like, who do you know who to call if you have problems with your car, you know, if there's a problem with your house or plumbing or whatever, but who do you call? You know, it sounds like a Ghostbusters, right? And it's like, but you know, if you don't travel in those circles, you know, it's not like you just, you know, go down the list, right? And now it's getting a bit more talked about. It's getting a little bit more accepted, you know, because of shows and books and everything. But going back 10 or so years, you know, there wasn't a lot of shows. It wasn't like the big, you know, there, and it was just kind of getting off the ground, so to speak, on the public aspect. But really, you know, she came over and really nothing happened out of that I would say was ground shattering. And one of the things, because I wasn't open to receiving, she was giving me a message from my deceased grandfather, and who was a World War I veteran. And I was like, nothing against Grandpa, but you know, why is he here? Why the hell is he here? Like, you know, why'd you show up? Are you lost? Or what? Right. And, you know, she was like, well, he's helping you after deployment and, you know, you know, after 24 years, anybody that's been in the military racks up a frequent flyer miles of government sponsored vacations, as I like to refer to them. And, you know, so I'm going off my list of where was he after this deployment and this deployment and this. And she's, well, I can't tell you that, but I can tell you that he's here now and he's supporting you and loving you and all this great stuff. And you got to remember, my mind at that time, I'm like, whatever, you know, she's smoking that sage stuff. I know that was what I was thinking. And I was thinking, we just need to move on. And quite honestly, that's, you know, we just got done with the evening and nothing changed except actually the activity in the home picked up. And about 2 weeks after that event, I was washing bottles for my son around midnight. Everybody's in a bed except me. And all of a sudden, I knew my grandmother was standing behind me. Now, for most people, that's not a bad thing. But my grandma on my mom's side died when I was like 11. So like, you know, 1981-ish. So, you know, and for a guy that, and especially somebody that, you know, you talk about Disrupture now, I was like, excuse me, how do I know it's grandma? And just, you know, I was flabbergasted. Like, how do I just know? Yeah. Like there was no note, there was no, and it was the clear cognizance or the clear knowing that there was no question in my mind that it was anybody other than grandma. And then, so quite honestly, I'm having a out loud conversation with myself at the sink at midnight going, well, I don't know. It's grandma. She's not here to hurt us. Right. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going to go crazy and I'll end up on meds. And, you know, so there was that part of me that was trying to psychoanalyze myself. And I'm like, oh, I need to go to bed. So, you know, I went to bed and quite honestly, I call my ego my drunk friend. I jokingly refer to my ego as my drunk friend because always a better idea. Got to put logic to things. And, you know, my ego showed up when I was laying in bed. I was very much awake, had my eyes closed. And, you know, I was really saying to myself, you know what, this is all BS, Dean. You're tired, maybe a bit scared. If she was really here, she would prove it beyond a shadow of a doubt. So that way you can't just, you know, disprove it. And immediately, without question, it was immediate. The room dropped by, you know, a good 10 to 15 degrees. It was absolutely frigid in the bedroom. And I was like, holy, you know what? Yeah. And I was like, and then my mind has to make sense of it, right? It's off peak power. The wife's got the window open. Maybe she's got a fan, right? Because it can't be a ghost. It can't be the spirit of my dead grandma. You know, God forbid, right? And So then my ego pops up and saying, you know what, this is really easy to disprove. If she is absolutely here without a question, then she should just touch us. If she could touch us, then we can't disprove, that is something that would be so visceral that I couldn't, make logic out of, so grandma wasn't there to disappoint that night because, I still remember it like it was yesterday. It was a gentle yet firm pressure. Started top of my head, went to the bottom of my feet, and quite literally, guys, just pushed me right into the mattress. Now, she wasn't choking me. It wasn't mean. It wasn't, scary. Right? It was like, you will believe. It wasn't that, I wasn't levitating. I wasn't, green goo coming out of my eyes. It wasn't anything crazy like that, but it was where like somebody was literally laying on top of me. And by this time, it was like the 6-year-old little boy in me came out and was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
What? I just broke the 7th seal to hell.
Wow.
How do I shut it off? And it was like, really out of fear and saying, all right, grandma, see you and love you. Like, you need to leave. And as soon as I said that, boom, it was like nothing ever happened. But I'm
the hair on my arm stands
right.
I'm afraid. It's just
right. And it was something so visceral. Talk about going, it was, it had been building up, but all of a sudden at that one pivotal point in time, it was, you talk about Disrupture now, it was now, and I really went on a journey of why me and why now. It wasn't like I was looking for it. I didn't have an interest in it. I didn't have any, I wasn't diagnosed with any TBIs or any PTS or PTSD or anything. I felt that I was pretty, for the most part, normal. Who depends who you ask, right? And you're just a straight-laced normal guy, really kind of boring in my view. And I was like, why now? And so I went back. And quite honestly, things started picking up in that realm where I knew that I was getting messages, but I didn't know how to access them. I started getting a lot of different things. And so I went back to that one lady that I, was poking fun at and calling her because I was like that. She's the only one that I know. And I was like, I need to figure this out. And she was like, you're a medium. And I was like, the hell I am. I don't want it. And she was like, it does not work like that.
Man.
And, if I could have returned it to sender, I certainly would have. But it was really, when it wouldn't go away, I decided that I would embrace it. And I wanted to figure out, really started the journey of what does being a medium mean for Dean McMurray, not somebody on TV like James Van Prague or John Edwards or, and nothing against those guys or anybody else that has a show or whatever, but that's them. Right. And it wasn't me. And I was like, what am I going to, if you wake up with an extra thumb, you're like, great. Now what am I going to do with this? Right now I got to get all new gloves. So, it was, so the aspect of, I poke fun at it. What am I going to be given readings, in my basement? And I really think like, one of my guardian angels be like, yeah, you're going to be given readings in your basement, in your garage, and in Ubers and in tour boats and anywhere else that you're asked to give readings and really help others at a deeper level. And really the psychic medium piece for me was really the starting. And it's just manifested into other things. And along the way, I took a course in mediumship to understand it. And really for almost, I want to say about 1.5 years, almost 2 years, it was learning about it and doing readings for free and really just figuring out what it's even going to look like for me. And then when I finally pulled the plug from the military, which is, I think it'll be 8 years in May, that I've been fully retired, is, just walking away and doing something completely different and really serving at a higher level. And really it was, once I started embracing it, I was like, wow, I really can't ignore this. Like it just became natural. Like I almost say sometimes like I really found who I truly was.
Yeah.
Because I was identifying with labels so much. Because back then, if you would have asked me who I was, I would have told you I'm a soldier. Like the first word, probably, I'm a soldier, I'm a husband, I'm a father. Like those are labels. But understanding that labels don't define us, right? We're so much more. But you know, that's how I saw myself. And because I needed to be part of something bigger than myself to really help other people. And that, you know, there was an aspect of that. And I think that's also when I realized why do you want to even do mediumship? I was like, I don't. And then it was like, well, wait a minute, you can help people doing this. And I was like, and I can do it in a completely different way without, how do I want to say, the confines of the government bureaucracy.
Yeah.
And I can do things in a very non-traditional way. And it was like, well, then there's no way that I'm going to, you know, the universe and you know, those in spirit weren't going to let me ignore what was going on. And, you know, it was certainly not something that I could ignore, but
yeah. Well, you know, I want to say, I don't think I said this at the beginning. Well, I did say we're at the beach. I don't have a great wireless connection. So if I go in or out, y'all just keep talking and I'll pop back up whenever I do. But I love, Dean, that you said, what does this mean to me? What do I want it to mean for me? That you didn't want to do it like everything else. And that's one of the things that we talk about with people a lot, that it's your business and you can make it anything you want. Even if you're in the same industry or sector or whatever as other people, that doesn't mean that you have to build your business like they did. So I love that you did that well before you actually started the business. And I've never had a reading, but I've actually had some experiences. When I was in college, we used to call them prankster ghost, but two of the things it did, one night, it was like midnight, 1 a.m, and we heard all this loud clattering from the kitchen, and my two roommates and I run in there, you know, what's going on? And we had left pots and pans upside down on a dish towel to dry, and they were all sitting out on the floor, but they were nested and all the handles were lined up. And we're like, what the hell? So anyway, we picked them up and we were just laughing. We didn't feel afraid or anything. And then one of the other things that happened, similar thing, loud clattering, but it came from the bathroom. And you know how showers will have the recessed window and you put all your stuff up there. So 3 girls living in an apartment, we had a ton of shampoo and conditioner and stuff. And the shower curtain was closed all the way, but every bottle from that window was out in the floor and they were all standing up in the floor. So, and you know, people laugh, they would laugh. And my son, I've told them, and I'm like, I don't care if you believe me because it happened to me. And I always tell people, when it happens to you, you will know it and you won't laugh anymore and you won't make fun of other people. But I've never had a reading or anything like that.
I guess the thing that I would share is now it's good, Lisa, that you were sharing that you had a neat ghost, which is nice. Maybe had an OCD complex, maybe prior to passing, but yeah, you know, one of the things is that there, you know, people, wherever they are with their belief system, and that's one of the things when I got into this, I still am very cognizant of where I used to be. You know, as far as where I was back 10 years ago and saying, you know, I remember being skeptical. I wasn't a cynic. There's a difference. I was very skeptical. And at times I still am. I need to vet out my own, you know, whatever it is. And I think a dose of skepticism is healthy. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. But you're certainly not going to, and it's really not our job to make, you know, non-believers believers. And if somebody really doesn't want to believe for whatever reason, whether it's their religious belief or just because, you know, whatever, that's okay, because I recognize that and saying, you know what, I'm not here to sit on my soapbox, nor do I have time. to try to convince somebody, you know, that, you know, why they should, because I think you nailed it on the head there, Lisa. Some people need to have their own experience, like me.
Yeah.
For me, I needed to have my own visceral experience that I couldn't debunk, that I couldn't ignore, and I needed to proverbially get my shit together. So and it takes a while, because you got to learn what the heck is it, and what can you do with it, and how you're going to use it. And then, you know, and then go ahead and start slowly helping people. That takes a while. And for some, it takes longer, right?
And it is a gift, but it's no different than learning a new language or learning to program or anything. You have to figure out how you're, like, if you're learning a new language, you have to learn to think in that language and that kind of stuff. So I think that's really cool. But I also think the fact that you were reluctant gives you more credibility, probably, with a lot of people, because they'll be like, oh, well, he didn't believe in that. You know, it makes you feel more objective, probably.
Well, I guess that's one angle to look at it. I guess I don't know. I haven't heard that aspect, but thank you for bringing that up. And if somebody resonates with that, sure. And that was for me more personally. Yeah. If somebody sees their, you know, a similar journey in it, great. But really, it's just like, well, that's who I was, because I wasn't looking for it. And, you know, and I just want to go back, because I know a lot of people try to analyze it. And I wasn't raised in a spiritual household. You know, it was very traditional, like Lutheran, you know, traditional. You go to church every Sunday, Sunday school, Easter, Christmas, all that, right? All observed at our home throughout my childhood. And, you know, very supporting, very loving family, nothing out of the ordinary, and very middle-class, blue-collar family. But it was just the experience that I was supposed to step in. Crazy thing, I want to share this, is after I stepped into mediumship and everything, and then I came out of the proverbial quote-unquote metaphysical closet, right? And that's where I announced not only to the world, but my family. Now, my wife and my kids, you know, yeah, they knew, because really it was my wife pushing me and encouraging me. But the other aspect is where I told my parents. And, you know, and I think at every level with our family, one thing that we want regardless is acceptance. We want to be accepted. We want to be acknowledged. We want to be loved at every level. And it was kind of scary, because I had never been there. And I was like, you know, regardless of maybe, you know, if somebody is coming out and declaring maybe their sexuality or their spirituality, you know, it's something that's hidden. Right. And all of a sudden now you figure it out for yourself. And now, holy crap, you're, you know, so, and it was so funny, because my mom, you know, my mom just goes, well, that makes total sense. And I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, oh yeah, you had imaginary friends. And she goes on, and I'm like, well, here I am. You know, here I am, early 40s. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And I was like, hello, no memo, no memo. And she was like, well, you don't really talk about it because it's kid stuff, and you just move along.
Yeah, you just assume.
Yeah. And so, and it's interesting because as we were sharing before we went live, is, you know, my dad's now passed, but the interesting thing is at the time, he was chatting with his sisters in Canada. So we shared about my family that is part Canadian, basically. And he was sharing that, you know, hey, you know, Dean's a medium, a psychic medium. And his sister goes, oh, don't you remember Aunt so-and-so? And he was like, who? And Aunt so-and-so, she was a psychic. Oh, wow. And she was and they were telling me this. I was like, you got to be crap. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, all of a sudden the closet psychic out of the family, like from deep dark reaches of Canada, come out. And I was like, oh my God. Right. So, but it's interesting. I found that very fascinating. Yeah. And I was like, and things that make you go, So,
Yeah.
but what was cool, what I found was when I stepped out and declared really who I was, and really, it wasn't about, the real piece wasn't about declaring it to my family. It was me embracing who I was, when I really, like, yeah, I'm really a medium now, when I could say it without going, ew, it wouldn't feel weird. Like, I don't really buy into it, but I'll just say it. But the
I
piece
imagine it
is,
was hard though.
yeah, it was, because I was like, how can I call myself, in the beginning, I was like, don't you need a diploma? Don't you, I don't know. Do you just call yourself a medium? Do I get a t-shirt? I suppose I got to get a tattoo or something. Right.
Yeah.
And, and of course I joke a lot, but really I thought that because so many things in our life, we have to get a degree to declare to other people that you're certified at some level. Mm-hmm. And I was like, even though you can do that in spirituality, so I can take a course in mediumship and get a piece of paper, but really, what does that prove? It proves that you paid money to an organization and you sat through classes, or maybe not, and learn different fundamentals, or maybe not. I don't know the validity unless you do your own vetting of the organization people. What I'm trying to say is this is, I think so many people put so much emphasis on a piece of paper and not the individual themselves.
Yep.
And so when somebody really kind of got that through to me, it was like, Dean, really what you need to be focusing on is the craft itself. Focus on become a good medium. And that's really probably when you're going to start being comfortable with saying, yeah, I can, I can do mediumship, and saying, okay, then you're comfortable with calling yourself a psychic medium. Then that qualifies. It's like, if maybe you didn't go to, say you're a mechanic, you call yourself a mechanic, but you didn't go to quote unquote mechanic school, like, A&E certified or whatever. But you can turn a wrench like nobody's business and replace a motor and do everything else. Could you call yourself a mechanic? You're damn straight you could. Maybe not certified in certain things and recognized in certain realms, but and it's the same thing with any niche area. But the thing that I would share is, focus on like what's your service, providing the service to others. But anyways, getting back to that, it was, just kind of getting out there. And when I did that, it gave permission for my sisters, which is really cool. It gave permission for my sisters to kind of come out of the closet themselves. And my sister is extremely clairaudient.
Oh, wow.
Because she can hear. And I was like, and so I had noticed because, so physically outside, like I can hear you right now. And I was like, and she was playing with her hair one time, like a bug. And I said, and her name's Susan. I said, Susan. I was like, well, I don't call her Sue. Sue, how long have you been getting bugged by spirit? Like, and she was like, got really quiet. And it was like, and so we started having a talk. And then my other sister, Kathy, then it was like, the connection of knowing, she's a more traditional religious, but yet now she sees a connection between the spiritual aspect and traditional religion. And it is really kind of fascinating. Opens a whole different dynamic, different than what I deal with customer or, clients. And so when we have a family discussion, like when I'm around my sisters, especially, the last time I was really home was my, last summer, it was around Christmas, I guess. Sorry. But prior to that was, my dad's funeral. And it was interesting because doing what I do now really opened a different dynamic, and it brought a lot more sense of peace, knowing where, hey, we knew dad was sick. We knew dad was struggling. Yeah, it's still hard. We still feel the emotions. It's still raw. It's still real, and we still hurt. But at the same time, there is a comforting knowledge of knowing where he's going, and then also being able to receive signs from him immediately, like without question, right?
Yeah.
And it was so cool that to be part of that on a level. For me, obviously, with family, it was such more personal, but it was really cool nonetheless. And
Well, Dean, sorry to butt in, but I was just
yes,
thinking
I'm rambling.
No. I was just thinking as you're talking, like as you're learning how to get in tune with all of these things, were there triggers or things that you saw in other people? Like, what are the things that you feel or see, or are you looking for certain things? Like, how do you hone this kind of craft?
Oh, sure. So like so I guess really the way that I would share it is, in the beginning, it was almost like I'm trying to find words to describe it. It was almost like looking at a roulette reel, right?
Okay.
But it had like faces on it, and it was in a blackened room. And the only thing that was lit up, Rachel, was like the faces. And it was almost like they would spin in my mind's eye past, so where I could see them. And then all of a sudden it would stop on, say, a female. And so I'm like, okay, I see a female stepping forward. And then it was like that silhouette of that face would zoom towards me. Okay. And I'm seeing all this taking place, of course, again in my mind. And then, maybe she would turn towards me, and maybe I'm seeing a pearl necklace. Maybe I'm seeing the style of her hair, maybe a simple cross necklace, or whatever the case is. Talking about maybe it's a male, and maybe, all of a sudden, and sometimes different senses also came in, as far as where maybe, for example, some men that, like smokeless tobacco or cha, right? Mm-hmm. And the thing is where I would start tasting it. Now I got to share, many years ago in the military, I didn't quit until I was kind of out, but I was kind of a smokeless tobacco user, right? And so I understood a little bit. So there's a little bit of knowledge there. But the thing that I want to share is that sometimes there's people that use all type of products. So, if there was a grandpa or grandma that liked to, every Sunday to sit after church and have like just a little cup of beer and put some salt in it and sit there with peanuts and play cribbage with the crew, or pinochle or whatever with everybody, or sit there and eat stewed tomatoes or just something very specific to them. Sometimes that comes through. And then really, Rachel, it evolved as far as how I started receiving things, because it was like, I didn't take a course on like, okay, let's develop our clair senses, our different, we think of our physical senses like sight, sound, taste, touch, all that. Well, then we have our clairs, our psychic ability, right? Our sixth sense. And so whether it's clair audience, clair hearing, clair gustance, clair tasting, all of that, all of those, where it just started developing. Yeah. And where I think, Lisa, you talked about it so beautifully. I love how you brought that in early, is because I use it with students, is talking about really learning how the universe was speaking to me, because it was signs, symbols, shapes, everything. And it wasn't just hearing them talk. It was also augmented with, maybe it's a grandmother stepping forward or a mom, and she had just the in fact, I was doing an event last night, to be quite honest, and there was a female that stepped forward, and she had a floral. She was crazy about Febreze, not Febreze, but the bathroom cleaner, and she was always like spraying it all over the house. She was crazy for it. And I was like, oh my God. And it was almost, because I was quite literally going, like I could taste it. It was in the back of my throat. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, it's so thick. And she was like, oh my God, that's, makes so much sense. And
so you'll get you'll see or hear or see something like that really means something to somebody.
Right.
Know what
Right.
it's mean to them when you mention it. They're like, is that kind of
Right.
accurate?
And so and I also have to share is a medium is a medium is a medium, meaning, in my words, meaning we all do the same thing. We connect to the spiritual plane. We're connecting to spirits, but we all do it differently. There's mediums across the board that, I think, what's his name? Tyler John, he scribbles more in a book, right?
Mhm.
But he still delivers the message, some are great with names. I'm not so great with names. I don't get names a lot. Sometimes I will, letters, numbers, different things, random. But everybody works differently, and it's okay. However that shows up. It's crazy because, whether it's making a big deal over like a change purse or things that were special to them and things that, and I know there's a lot of people that don't believe in this stuff, saying you're cold reading or hot reading, or you're guessing to the point like you're reading people's body's language or whatever, or if you see a tinge of emotional response, you just hone in and all the debunking. And I would share are there people out there that do that? I'm sure there are. I wouldn't doubt that there are. But the thing that I could share with those is I don't do that. And so I take what I do very seriously. And I just feel really humbled and honored to be able to do it. Especially, I've had the honor and opportunity to be called into a hospice unit with a dying fellow vet and their family, and just some really special moments that I'll never ever forget that really impacted me, or connecting to the children of, that died in a car accident of parents. And just as a parent myself, I'm just like, after the reading, I'm just like, wow, you want to hug your kids a little bit more. Right. And it's just like, it gets to you sometimes. And it's just like, wow.
It does. I imagine, especially dealing with children or
right.
the hospice situation. Would the family be wanting to communicate with the person who's in hospice? Like maybe they can't communicate other ways, or is it to people who've already gone, or a mixture?
Well, what in their situation, what it was is the wife requested me to give a reading, and it was to give the dying veteran and the family reassurance that, and confirmation that those in spirit, like basically his mom and other folks, were waiting in the wings to basically, bring him home. Right. And, and to give him a little peace and saying that, love does not die. It's only a transformation, and saying, yes, our physical body will one day cease to exist, but the energy of our soul lives on forever. And that's been validated time and time again, and science is catching up. And I just think it's so exciting that piece, because it gives the bridging the real, the scientific aspect with the metaphysical, and saying you can have a million readings and get all kinds of beautiful validation. And people talk about just some cool stories that will just touch your heart. And, but there's still be the folks that be like, I can't go there, Dean. And that's okay. Again, I go back to it and saying, you know what, that's okay. I respect their where they are, and I recognize and validate where they are. And I'm like, okay, that's okay, because I was there too. And
may I ask a question out of curiosity?
Yeah, in the back. Yes, the lady in the back.
Down in front. So just like, and honing in on your craft, obviously, is this something you can control? Or is it like, this is idle curiosity from my point. It's like, Dean, are you walking down the street and it's like you pass these people and it's like, hey, there's somebody behind me going, there's a female here that wants to talk to this person. Or is it something you truly have to or can't? I'm sure when you can control it a bit more, but is it something that they're blaring in your ear like, you need to talk to this person right now?
You know, sometimes it's like that, right? Sometimes there'll be something so big that, or spirit will just show up. And I'm like, oh, there's totally a mom or a dad hanging out with them. But here's the thing, and I talked about this last night to a group, is because this comes up all the time because we see it on TV. They edit out the part that where they might talk saying, hey, is it okay if we give you a reading or whatever? But I will never ever go up and pre-read somebody.
Right.
I won't connect. Like, I can see all three of you right now, and I am not reading you whatsoever. I'm not reading your aura. I'm not doing any of that. And because here is the number one reason. I would not want somebody to do that because I believe it is a violation of my energy, and I believe it's a violation of your energy. I believe that it is my personal belief that, this is a very sacred space. It's very intimate. And if you come to me for a reading or you go to anybody else, you're giving them permission to not only connect to your energy, but then connect to spirit, right? And there's all kinds of stuff that shows up around readings. It could be talking about sex, money, marital stuff. I mean, it's almost like sometimes almost like a counsel, but spirit is talking about life and talking about how much they love you. And it's not all, unicorns and puppy kisses. Sometimes it's hard, real, they're either grieving or a lot of guilt, or there's all kinds of situations out there. And
you saying that right there, just like that made me feel like if I were going to have someone do that for me, like that instantly, like that took my guard down instantly. You just saying those words of like respecting that. I think that's really powerful. I wanted to say that because I felt at ease. I was like, that's incredible.
One thing I always share with everybody before I start the reading is I always tell them it's completely confidential unless spirit taps me on the shoulder and goes, you really need to share this story because it's so impactful with others. And so I always ask the client saying, can I share your story? I won't share your name. I won't share any of your personal details, but spirit is really guiding me. This is it's just mind blowing. And, a lot of times they'll say yes. I think there's only been one or two saying, no, I really don't feel comfortable. And I respect their wishes. I won't even hint at it or nothing. So thank you, Rachel. So I completely, believe that it is a huge violation because I don't, I was brought up with the aspect and maybe I'm just, too old fashioned, whatever, but it's like do unto others as you would, do unto you. And, come at it from a kind aspect, come at it from a giving heart and, really stay in a heart-centered place when you're doing it. Doesn't matter what's going on at home or whatever. It's like, put that aside, focus on what's going on. And then the other pieces, but there has been times getting back to the question. I have never said to anybody, hey, I'm a psychic medium. Are you open to a reading?
Okay.
And because to answer your question, what I have done is I was in an Olive Garden here in the local area. And there was a gentleman behind the bar, stocking the bar, doing bartender stuff. And there was totally a dead guy following him. And I started having a conversation. I was waiting for it to go order, quite honest. So this is going back a number of years. And I was like, so are you this guy's dad? And he was like, yeah, this is my son. And
but you're having the conversation.
In my head, I'm having the conversation. And I was like, okay, yep. All right. That makes sense. And I was like, so if you want me to deliver your message, that you're going to have to make arrangements, right? to either him strike up a conversation, because I'm not going to initiate, saying, hey, I'm a psychic medium, you got, and because I know, number one, people that aren't really open will first off give you the eye roll. Number two, it just didn't feel like the right fit. And there's been other instances where early on in my development or kind of journey, quite honestly, just random spirits are showing up at the house.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so like when big national events happen, sometimes it happens, not all the time. And we remember instances like Sandy Hook. There was going back a number of years, there was a very prominent airliner that went missing, different things like that. And where
so people like who were lost in that,
dead people started showing up at the house, like in large numbers. Yeah. And I'm like, and so the thing that I would always tell them, that I'm in North Dakota, right?
Yeah.
You know where I live. And I'm like, okay, so here's how we're going to work this. If you got a message, I'm going to write it down, because there's no way that I'm going to even call anybody, because I'm going to be the kook from North Dakota, number one. And it's insensitive, number two, to the families. And I'm not going to do that, because I wouldn't want anybody to do that to my family. And saying, put it back on them, and saying, you know what, because there is a divine connection, and saying, if the time to deliver, and little snippets like this, when I'm on different shows, to sharing, I'm trusting that the right people are hearing a little bit of it, or whatever. But it was never done to promote that, hey, I journaled down a message from, so-and-so or whatever from, Sandy Hook or whatever. It was never a proud moment. It was, in fact, really hard for me. And in fact, that event, because I stay away, I don't even have cable, to be quite honest. But it was really, really hard, because I felt like I was grieving as a parent.
Yeah.
And because I was picking up the empathetic, aspect, and what was going on throughout the nation. Everybody was grieving, and rightfully so, right? They've done that with every terrible event. And so, but the thing that I would share is that there's been a lot of others too, and I had to set some parameters around. I had to set some boundaries, because I started getting a lot of pre-information about natural disasters, people dying in wildfires, different things. And I was like, and I said, quite honestly, I kind of made a blunt. I was like, I don't want this.
Yeah.
If I can't help them, I don't want to know prior, because what am I supposed to do with it? Yeah. Okay, great. I got it written down in a notebook, but what am I supposed to do with it now? And go back, remember that time that I don't want that.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm making the conscious choice. If that's something that's part preordained, whatever, part of the bigger, so be it. But if I can't do something to help that individual, if I can't, if there was some, I think there was a time where, was it Colorado or California or something? There was a lot of, firefighters that died, or something there at one time. But and it just kind of really struck me that I was like, why am I getting this stuff? And I was like, it really should be, if you're getting that information, and my thought anyways, is I would want it to use to help others. If you're getting it prior, wouldn't that be nice to give, hey, you need to stay out of this area? It's really, I get it. Fires are dangerous anyways. And people go in, brave people go in to stop that stuff. But here's the deal. You guys need to be, it's like, okay, Dean. All right. Yep. Sure. Right. So, but here's the thing is that, so I just asked to stop getting, if there's nothing I can do about it, and if there's no way that I can help, then I want to stop. I don't want to know about it prior.
Yeah. Right.
And
how do you work through that, Dean? Like getting those taking all of that on,
Yeah.
are you seeing someone to help you through that? Do you, or how does that work for you just to process that and move forward? How does that?
Yeah. Well, I'm human just like anybody else. And sometimes it's really heavy. I got a great wife. I got a great supportive family. So I think my internal support network, to help, if I really get down where I really feel heavy or whatever because of it. And sometimes, quite honestly, back in the early days, what I call early days, but a mediumship, there was a lot of times when I wanted to walk away from all of it. I was like, I don't want any part of this. That is just, I don't want to know that stuff. And it's like, because I always share that with people that start mediumship journey. I'm like, you can't unknow things. And I'm not saying it to be ominous. I'm not saying it to be like scary, but it's just the plain truth. You can't unknow things. And so, for example, knowing, a little bit on what you're saying, Rachel, is like, take it on a personal level, is well before a year prior to my dad passing, I knew that he was dying. And, I had told my wife, because my dad was going in the hospital for a diabetic amputation. I said, well, that's the last time dad will be ever come back in that house. And that was the case. And he ended up being in a home and all that great stuff. But what I'm sharing is sometimes you just know because you feel their energy, their life cycle, right?
Yeah.
And so, I guess I just deal with it. Some, you process through it. Sometimes you just have shitty days. I'm just going to be honest. Some days, some days you're just like, well, it's part of the territory. And it's part of knowing. I knew my mother-in-law was going to pass, before she did. And she, quite honestly, my mother-in-law, God bless her soul, she was on again, off again, supporter, lover, what I did. She was very traditional Lutheran for our area. And one of the things, just a very big German, right? And from the culture, and just a great individual. And but one of the things, she was complaining of pain, and my wife goes, Mom, Dean can see inside you. And one of the things that I picked up along the way, and what I call medical intuitive readings, and she was like, really? And yeah, he can look and see what that is. And so she was like, kind of, okay, see, kind of make jokingly. And I was like, are you sure you really want to know? Like, I was serious.
Yeah.
And she was like, and then she kind of looked at me. She was like, yeah. And I did kind of my reading or scan, if you will. And I said, Arlene, you need to go to the doctor and get checked out. I said, it feels like a mass or something. It doesn't feel good. And so what it was, quite honestly, she had what do they call it? Well, basically it was liver failure, but not because of alcoholism. It was like lupus, other childhood diseases. But then there was a mass of cancer that was on the decaying liver. And that's what I was picking up on. And then of course she passed, not long after all of that. And about 3-4 months after that. So one of the, it's challenging. It's a little bit easier when you're not connected personally, obviously, you're not personally vested. But when it's like your mother-in-law or your dad or your mom or something, you can just feel it, like your own child, like, what do you do?
Yeah.
And it's like, you just live life. You get up the next day, you put one foot in front of the other. And I kind of live with the aspect of knowing that I have this ability for a reason, and saying, okay, well, it's not about finding out what's wrong with people or knowing that they're dying or something. But, and there's a lot of people out there right now that's probably listening to this that go, oh my God, every time that I get something psychically or premonition, it's people dying. I hate it, Dean. I feel like I'm going crazy. I hate this. And it's not a gift. I feel like it's a curse. No, truly it is a gift. And when we look at it from a different perspective, it's really just about being able to read energy. And really it is. But most people pick up when people are at the end of their life cycle. So to answer your question in a long-winded way, Rachel, it was like, I guess I just find different ways to move through it. And, it's not as difficult if it's somebody that's not, like a good friend or family. Obviously, it's still hard because you still empathize, especially with children. I mean, good, gravy. And then when it's family, you just do the best you can. And it's like, but I've also struggled with, and this is the thing that I've struggled, if it's somebody that or even if you don't know, if you have pre-knowledge of their death, if you have pre-knowledge of their, sickness, I struggle with, how do you, do I make the, hey, this is what I'm getting. And so it's really, so what I've kind of came down to is this is, I kind of go back to the aspect of when doctors diagnose somebody with cancer. Ma'am, you got stage 4 ovarian cancer. You got 2 months to live. And almost to the day when they sentence somebody, I call that the sentence, is they usually pass within that time window, right? Because all of a sudden now the mind goes into shutdown mode. It's like,
they set their expectations.
Right. They're not going to fight it, right? And they're not going to live. And now you're completely changing the what they would do. Maybe they're not living full out like they would anymore. Right now, all of a sudden they're succumbing to and owning the label. We talked about labels a little bit ago of now I have cancer or whatever.
Yeah.
And the aspect of, so when I pick up on something that I feel is really serious, and of course, anytime I got to throw out the caveat, anytime that I pick up anything medical or anything else, I always share, hey, I'm not a medical professional. I'm not a doctor, nurse, anything like that. I can give you a Band-Aid. That's about as good as I can do. But please go and get checked by your healthcare provider, either at your next scheduled checkup or make an appointment as soon as you can. And it's the same with mechanics. If I see something going on with the vehicles or anything else, hey, please go, to your whoever does, your maintenance or whatever. So I don't want folks to think that, I'm a financial wizard or a medical wizard or, please validate and follow that up with the folks that help you. But anyways, I guess, but see, you get me talking and I won't shut up.
I'm still wanting to know. I mean, it's like you're able to shut this down, though. You can shut it down to a point. Like I'm thinking about your mind always being go, go, go.
I think because I learned for most people, they don't. And you can't shut it off. It's always around us.
Yeah.
Right. But I learned because I was still very much in the military and I was worried what my superiors were going to say. And I was worried, again, what other people were going to think, that out of necessity, I learned how to kind of shut it off or ignore it.
I want to tune it out.
Yeah, that's a good word. Tune it out when I needed to. And, quite honestly, now that I'm not wearing the uniform anymore, I still like to just be Dean. I still like to just go fishing and just hang out. I like to, just like anybody else. And sometimes, maybe I don't want to, just like a lot of moms or dads, sometimes you want to take a break from hearing dad, or, getting the eye roll from the teenager, it's whatever, you just want to go out and just be yourself and not be the psychic medium or be your labels and detach for a while. And so, it's almost like a survival mechanism that I learned. The other thing that I would share too is, it really, the way that it works for me is, after I give readings, people have come back like even the next day and it's like, oh my God, remember that reading? And I'm like, no, I'm sorry, I don't. And it's like, I remember talking to them and I might remember bits and pieces, but I don't want to carry their stuff around because we had that experience for however long the reading was. And you think of doing hundreds and hundreds of readings and all the emotion released. Would you want to carry that around? Good Lord. I'd be in the funny farm.
So I want to ask one more curiosity question.
Yes.
Because you said, like, you were at Olive Garden that night and you see this guy working and there's a dead guy following. How did you know that was a dead guy? No.
Well, since the aspect that I could see him more in my mind's eye and I, versus my, because I was like, and I could feel it more energetically, right? And I was like, that's a total spirit.
I'm imagining like Hollywood and I'm seeing like a regular guy and then like some spiritual being like following him.
Yeah. So you summed it up really good, like Hollywood. So there's a difference between, and I got to share, there are some times where you're going to see physical manifestations, but that's not typically the norm. It takes a lot of energy for spirits to physically manifest and move things and do other phenomena. So it's not as common as a lot of people play it, but it's what draws attention and the drama to people and shows, right? And that's what they edit everything else out and they show those clips and they make a great movie out of it and all that, right? It makes great TV. It makes great, but that's not the typical. But so it wasn't a physical manifestation and all of like a Hallmark movie and like the soldier that was talking to the guy and all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, he was an angel, right? It's So, but
well, for other entrepreneurs that are watching, first of all, I think this topic is so fascinating and I think everybody will think it's fascinating. But aside from the topic itself, I want y'all to clue into what Dean talked about not knowing, not realizing that he had these gifts. And then once he realized it, he had to decide, do I want to pursue it or not? And then he actually worked on his craft, if you will, and learned and trained and got better at it. But he also talked about who he will work with, who he won't work with, the kind of work he wants to do, and not just from the people that he's consulting with, but also from the spirits. And that gets down to, for any business person out there, your target market, your niche. And we all small business owners will, a lot of us get into these situations where it's the kind of work we don't really want to be doing, but we do it because somebody asked, or we feel like we need the money, or there's somebody we don't really like, we're not a good match for, but we work with them because we need the money. And so your business is totally different from ours, but it's still the same issues.
Right. It's the same principles, right? Yeah, it's the same principle, the same setup. And the thing that I would share too, Lisa, with that is one of the things that over the years, and this is what I've really kind of the soapbox that I've been on now, is I've been a big proponent of leveraging your intuition to accentuate whatever industry or job you do. So we talk about maybe realtors or investors or any entrepreneur. I don't care if you're a ditch digger, police, fire, whatever. If you leverage and, in the intuition defined as the inner gut knowing, right? A connection to a higher knowing, is to accentuate what you're doing in work currently in your niche. And you can really get a leg up over the competition if you start listening to your own gut and be like, ooh, maybe now is a great time to do the investment or the merger, or hey, maybe now is the right time to flip that home, or whatever the case is, right? And that's one that I have been working because I was like, yeah, the psychic medium thing. I love working with clients and giving readings. That's, what we do. But I was like, there's got to be more. What else can I do?
Mm-hmm.
And when I started looking at it, I was like, and then I started reading stories like in more areas like Florida and California and stuff, and bigger progressive cities talking about corporate psychics.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, where they're consulting with, and I was like, I have this ability and I was like, hey, I need to be able to pitch this to, and I was like, this really intrigued me. And I started doing that. And really, I kind of came up with a psychic on speed dial. Cool. And it was really pitched the individual, and really was interesting because then you get all kinds of people that came into play, like, Fortune 500 companies and, scientists and other folks that just came out of the woodwork. And because they love the idea of having basically having my services on retainer for the year, and saying that, hey, I would love to have, maybe they're on their own journey, whatever the case is, but also being able to get some psychic validation and what they're doing, saying, hey, I got to issue an HR and thinking about going this, what are you getting around this? There was one I want to share that I can share with you, is that I was working with the business owner at the time. She has products all across the United States. I want to say possibly in Canada as well. She's a Fortune 500 company, originally from North Dakota, based out of North Carolina. And one of the things I want to share is in her formulation, I was like, she had some concerns. She wasn't sure what was going on. And I used some other abilities that I have, some remote viewing and some other stuff, and actually found that the lead scientist that is supposed to be following the FDA approved formula was messing with it. So basically wasn't following what the FDA said. Well, if people that make items that have an approved list of ingredients, if they don't follow that, that's big money, like millions. They can be fined, like they could bankrupt, right? And so they completely shut the line down. They had to pull millions upon millions of dollars off the shelves because they didn't know where it was. And then, but it saved them actually even potentially more money, and where they were able to quickly shift and figure everything out and then indict the actual scientist. It was, so it's interesting. It's really, so if you have a craft, so, maybe you're not a psychic medium, but really looking at how you can, how can I market this? How can I, oh my God, there's, they want to, and I started working also with, because I offer dowsing or home cleansings. And I was like, oh my God, homes are selling quicker after I cleanse them. Well, who works with homes? Realtors. Well, maybe I could work with realtors. And then I kind of came up with intuitive real estate consulting. I'm not a realtor, but I'm a, independent consultant that comes in and works with anybody, even homes for sale by owner. And where I help them through energy sell their home even quicker. Now I know that we're in a great market right now, especially in our area, and last year too was a great year. But there's some sticky points, and sometimes they need help. So
yeah, that's really cool.
So it's finding like the little nuances that you can really market, and then saying you just don't have to do one thing.
Yeah.
It's like, what other tools you got in your toolbox? And saying,
find a little hole out there that nobody else is filling. And then
that's right. Or even if there is, that's okay. Put your own spin on it, because you're going to do it. I mean, quite honestly, let's be honest. Mediums are a dime a dozen. So are psychics. You put it in a Google search. There's a bazillion of them, right? And so, the thing is understand that, how do you diversify yourself? How do you start looking at other ways of doing what you do, but at a bigger level? And so whether it's, maybe energy healing, if you're in the holistic community, maybe it's energy healing, maybe it's, again, dowsing, maybe it's, I don't know, but, you can offer all kinds of niche services that maybe only you do. And, you know,
it's
it's,
like with me, well, I've owned my business for 25 years, internet and web development, web design and everything. And a chief web officer is a position that even most big companies don't have yet.
right.
And so they're basically dumping that on their marketing people and or their technology people. And those people don't have the entire, you know, the financial acumen, the design, the marketing, the everything. And I do. So I started chief web officer for a day service.
Nice.
Yeah. So if somebody, because it's really not fair to your marketing people or your IT people to expect them to be able to take that step back. And, you know, I tell people, you don't have your bookkeeper doing your CFO stuff.
Right.
You know,
Right.
you have to have somebody that can have the big picture look, but that doesn't mean that you need a CFO on a daily basis.
Right. Yep.
You know, unless you're a big company. So that's why I started that chief web officer for a day. So
nice.
yeah.
I think one of the things too, Lisa, is what people overlook is when they start looking at, you know, chunking out what they do and kind of really, you know, we talk about, you know, even your business or whatever, the stuff for a day. For a lot of people, I know, especially in the beginning for me, I was like, who would hire like a psychic for a year? And I was like, but then it was like, I'm sure there was somebody sitting up like in heaven going, you dummy. Like, why don't you just do it? Like there's people that need your service and would very gladly pay because they pay even more money to private consulting firms that don't do, you know, near what you do. You do things completely different. And why don't you break that out for them? And then it's really coming up with the words to describe what you provide.
Yeah, that's it. And breaking down your own internal, you know, your own internal voice that's telling you, no, you can't do it. And then breaking it down in a way that other people can understand what you do and how you can help them. This has been so much fun. I want us to do a family reading.
I know.
Not right now. Not right now.
No,
But
right here.
but this has been so much fun, Dean.
I know. I've enjoyed it as well.
If anybody wants to hire you for a reading or anything, tell them how they can reach you.
So you just go over to my website at themilitarymedium.com or deanmcmurray.com, and it's all right there. You can book a reading, see what's going on, read about my story, watch some videos. There's some other past interviews that I've done, just a few of the highlights or whatever. And and it's that's a great starting point. And then all the social media platforms, I'm most active on like Instagram and Facebook, but the Military Medium, just check me out there. And then if you just want to send me a message, you can do that through my website. There's a spot where you can send me an email or send me a message right on Facebook and we'll connect. If you got a question, maybe you're going through your own spiritual journey or whatever, I'm really open to, as long as I'm not busy, to take the time and answer those questions, to give somebody a little, I guess, guidance from my point of view anyways. So it's
awesome.
Just to help folks out.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, ladies. It was so fun. It was.
Do it again.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
You're too